Global War 36 enthusiast here with a video on understanding Dadao. Dadao is an Axis minor power which can be created by Japan. If created, the Dadao government is controlled by Japan. During the place units phase, Japan can make one influence roll on a Chinese warlord which is adjacent to a Japanese possessed land zone. So in the beginning of the game, Japan could either attempt to influence this warlord or the one in Suyan. So the warlord that controls Beiping also controls Hopei. The warlord that controls Suyan, that's the only territory that they control. If the roll is less than or equal to the total number of adjacent land zones that Japan possesses, all remaining land zones and military units of that warlord will align and become a Japanese-controlled Axis minor power, Dadao, the Dadao government. So you'd use this rondel to specify that, and you can get HBG, you can get reddish-colored Dadao units to replace them. Now note that when the CCP, the mechanism works very similar to how CCP's spreading influence works. If Rihi is, or if the Japanese are trying to influence Suyan, for example, they only have one land zone that's adjacent to Suyan. So the max they can spend is equivalent to how many territories they own. They could spend one IPP to increase the chances, and then they would succeed on a 1 or a 2. But just like the CCP's spreading influence, if you roll a 12, you can backfire. The influence attempt will backfire at a 12 no matter how much you spend, and that will cause a warlord to align with the KMT. That's the only way that KMT gets to take over the warlords, is when CCP or Japan tries to influence a warlord and the attempt backfires. So let's talk about, let's say that this did become a Dadao government. As long as it's controlled, the Dadao government will get recruitment rolls and may receive lend-lease from Japan. It may attack Chinese land zones without the rest of China aligning with CCP or KMT. And if attacked by CCP or KMT, it doesn't align with Japan. So basically, Dadao government and the CCP and KMT, they can fight each other. It's not going to have political implications outside of China. They're just in an internal struggle with one another. Now, if Japan declares war on China and is at peace with the other major powers, then this will continue to be Dadao government. It will not align to Japan. So in the early part of the game, let's say it's turn 4, that would be a classic scenario. And let's say Japan did get Suyan to join. Then they declare war on China. We have to do the disposition of the other warlords. Just there's a slight wrinkle to that determination of how we determine the warlords, because now if a warlord is bordering a Dadao government-possessed land zone, it will potentially align with the Dadao government. It aligns on an 11 or 12. So this is why if you do get this, not only do you get these units later, but you have a chance to align other warlords that are touching. And if you do align, one thing I want to point out is if you do align the Dadao government, this doesn't extend your reach to try to align, say, Qinghai, because it has to be Japanese-possessed land zones that are touching a warlord rather than Dadao government. In other words, now that Japan has succeeded here in Suyan, they don't get to have 2 in contact with the Beiping warlord because this doesn't count. It's not Japanese-possessed land zone. So if Japan declares war on China or is at war with China at some time in the future, and Japan is also now at war with a major power at that moment, any Dadao government forces align to Japan. So let's say you succeed here in Suyan and you're just fighting China, you're not at war with Great Britain, not at war with Russia or USA, and then you decide to do a surprise attack, say you're going to try to hit Calcutta as Japan, and now you're at war with a major power, and so then this would go, all these units would turn into Japanese units, and this rondel would change to a Japanese rondel. Note that when it's Dadao government, you don't get to collect the IPP for that. So you might want to be careful about influencing the Beiping warlord, because if you're successful here and you're not at war for, say, let's say you declare war on China on turn 4 and you don't declare war on the Commonwealth till turn 10, well, that's 6 turns that you're not collecting the income for Beiping 2 and the income for Hopei 1 and the bonus income of 1 for each of those territories, 5 IPP times 6 turns. So you might want to be, I think the way to go is to try to influence Suyan, because you reach out here to possibly get Singhai when you declare war, and you might also get this guy to join when you declare war. So that's something to keep in mind. If Dadao is attacked by a non-Chinese faction, let's say the Soviet Union's at war with Germany, and they align Mongolia, and let's say the Soviets decide to attack Dadao here in Suyan from Mongolia, what would happen? Well, then at the end of the attacker's combat phase, Dadao will align with Japan in that situation. So here's another little interesting wrinkle. Imagine if Japan never declared war on China, but they did declare war on the Commonwealth, and they've taken over Hong Kong. So the Japanese are here in Hong Kong. And let's also hypothetically say that France has fallen and Annam Tonkin went to Japan when we were doing the disposition of the Vichy, creation of Vichy. Now Japan has 2 land zones it possesses that are touching Kwangtung, that are adjacent to Kwangtung. And in this hypothetical, Kwangtung is still a warlord. Well, now Japan could spend 2, and they'd have a chance, 1 to 4, 1/3 chance of successfully influencing Kwangtung. I believe I saw Sarge's Shellhole do that in a game. I was very surprised about that. If a situation like that happened, and the Commonwealth declared war on Dadao, then at the end of the combat movement phase, this warlord, if this had gone to Dadao, this would align to Japan because the Commonwealth declared war on them. So let's just review. If KMT or CCP attack Dadao, no change. It doesn't cause them to align. If a major power attacks Dadao outside China, a major power attacks them, then it will align to Japan at the end of that combat phase. Dadao can only be created by the successful influence of a Chinese warlord. If Dadao government was never created before Japan declares war on China, then that means that Dadao will never be created that game, because Chinese warlords will all be aligned at that time when Japan declares war. So I guess my thoughts are just, my thoughts are, it might be worth paying 1 IPP to have a 1/6 chance to get all those units. You get 2 infantry, cavalry, and then 2 militia. I might not try to influence Beiping Hopei unless you're planning to be really passive in China. Dadao is about giving Japan another path where they don't have to attack into China, but they can still be involved. They can lend lease units in and try to disrupt or attack one of the 2 other factions there. But if you are planning to go into China, I probably wouldn't go after the Beiping Hopei warlord. This question was requested by Claudio5. Appreciate your question, and don't hesitate to leave me any questions in the comments below.